Oops. Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to me, you, and the Superbugs session 2. Welcome to everyone on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Superbugs Radio. And welcome to all the speakers and all the panelists and all the team. Thank you for joining. Before we have our first speaker on, we'll just get our lead organizer, Dr. Annie Durango, to say a few words. Over to you.
Okay. Can everyone hear me? Awesome. Great. Can you all see that? Great. All right. Welcome, everybody. This is day 2 and the final session of our 2020 Me, You, and the Superbugs event. I'd just like to say welcome, and I hope that you enjoy the session. We've got very interesting lineup of speakers for this day and lots of opportunities for you to ask questions and have your questions answered by a panel of healthcare workers and scientists. Fabulous. So I'd just like to give you an overview of what we have done so far in You and Superbugs and what it's all about. So antibiotic resistance is a real global public health threat, and especially in Nigeria, where people are able to get antibiotics over the counter, oftentimes without prescription. Research has shown that, common antibiotics like Flagyl, tetracycline, amoxycillin continue to be misused or overused in a variety of ways. We find that there is a continued need to educate the public about the correct use of antibiotics. So with the Me and the Superbugs panel, we started in 2018 with one event in Festac Town, Lagos, and that quickly grew to 3 events in 2019. So we had one in Lagos again, one in Ile-Ife, and another one in Ibadan, reaching out to healthcare workers, to secondary school students. And our events are open to be attended by any member of the public. The unique thing about us is that we aim to educate the public about the dangers of antibiotic resistant infections and practical things that they can do, we all can do, me and you, to reduce the spread of these diseases. Antibiotic resistance continues to be a silent killer. And as we continually misuse antibiotics, it makes the problem even worse. So I hope that you enjoy the session today. We've got a lovely lineup of speakers, and I'll hand over to Flora now, who will be introducing our first speaker today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Annie Durango. Thank you very much. Okay, so our first speaker for today is Dr. Chinyere Okoro. She's a researcher and lecturer in bacteriology at the University of Surrey in the UK. Her research focuses on bacteria that cause infectious diseases and attributes like antimicrobial resistance. So she's also an antibiotic guardian. You to hear more about that and the importance of that. So she's a pledged antibiotic guardian, and I'll hand over to her now. Dr. Okoro, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Flora and Dr. Orede, for that wonderful introduction. So today, it's my pleasure and privilege to talk to you a little bit more about antimicrobial resistance. Dr. Orede gave a splendid introduction at the beginning where she tells us exactly why this is important and why we, as ordinary people, whether you're a scientist or a researcher or a lecturer or a doctor or just a student in secondary school or primary school or university, a grandfather, a grandmother, anyone, why all of us should be concerned about this issue and what we can do. So the title, if for those of us who had the opportunity to look at the website and all the information we put out announcing this particular event, I did say it was the spread of antimicrobial resistance and everyone has a role to play. But while I was thinking a little bit more before the start of the meeting, I thought it's actually more important to say that controlling the spread of antimicrobial resistance is what we should be focusing on. And the role that everyone has to play is what I will sort of highlight in the next 20 minutes or so. So today, we'll start with sort of laying down some, first of all, re-emphasizing some of the points that was highlighted by the brilliant speakers last week, which is sort of primarily talking about what antimicrobial resistance is, why it is important, and why we should be concerned about it. And because I'm a biased bacteriologist, which just means that I like to study bacteria, I will tell you a little bit more about how antimicrobial resistance pertains to bacteria. And if you will permit me, I will try and let you know the simple things that bacteria does to become resistant and why we should be concerned at all, and how the resistant bacteria actually spreads, because it's important to know how it spreads so that we can then know how we can control the spread. And I will also emphasize the role that those of us who sometimes don't feel that we have a say in the matter, just like everybody, what we can do to help ourselves and to help the community we live in and the world in sort of as a great sphere. So I will be, as much as possible, we will use pictures to show the points that we're trying to make about antimicrobial resistance. So we'll start first by sort of primary definition. So here I'm just going to read what's on the slide, because this is the definition that has brought to us courtesy of the Africa CDC, and I think it's really simple and tells us exactly what it is that antimicrobial resistance is. So it is the ability of a microorganism to evolve. And this just means reducing or eliminating the effectiveness of antimicrobials against microbial infections in humans, plants, and animals. So it's very important to note that there are things here that we should focus on as we go forward, especially as I go forward in the talk. So it says microorganisms. These are little organisms, they're not visible to the naked eye, because micro just means small. And you will see that it means that the effectiveness of drugs or antimicrobials that we use to treat the infections caused by these microorganisms has been reduced in the case of antimicrobial resistance, and that antimicrobial resistance affects humans, plants, and animals, and I would even extend it to say the whole environment. So there is also a new word that has been introduced here, so which is the ability of the microorganism to evolve. In biology, evolution is a basic process, and it refers to the change in the characteristics of any organism over several generations. And so this just means that over several generations. Hello?
Sorry, Dr. Okoro.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, Dr. Okoro. We can't see your slides. We can't see your slides. Just share screen.
Okay. Can you see it now?
Yes, just
fantastic.
Yeah,
so I was just, can you see it now?
Yes, your first slide, yes.
Okay. So apologies for that. So I'm going to just quickly run through again. As I was saying, I thought that the title should be more apt. We'll start with controlling the spread of antimicrobial resistance. We thought it will be important to highlight that, because then that tells us what we can do and the roles we can play. And then I did say that today we will start talking about what we should know and what we should remember about antimicrobial resistance. And I'll tell you a little bit about what bacteria is, because I'm a completely biased bacteriologist. And I'll tell you how bacterial infections, especially those that are resistant to treatment, will spread. And the reason I want to tell you about this is because I think we can all play a role in controlling that spread, okay? And so I did start with talking about what antimicrobial resistance is. So antimicrobial resistance, as this figure says here, is the ability of a microorganism to evolve. And this evolution just means that the microorganism has reduced or has eliminated the effectiveness of the antimicrobials, which is used to treat infections that are caused by those microbes. And I wanted to also start by mentioning that in biology, evolution is quite a normal phenomena, and it just essentially refers to the change in the characteristics of a particular organism, whether it's a microorganism or human beings or higher animals, over several generations. During the course of this talk, we would, and as my colleagues who will come after me would allude to, we would frequently refer to microorganisms as microbes or bugs, because it's just really a mouthful to keep saying microorganisms. Okay, so if I say microbes, and I say bugs, I mean the same thing as microorganisms. And so we'll start with definitions that if you joined us, if you're lucky enough to join us last week, the fantastic speakers introduced in great detail what antimicrobials were. So just so that we bring people on board and we remind ourselves what antimicrobials are, I will start with defining that antimicrobials is a group of drugs or therapeutic agents that are used to treat infections caused by several microbes. And those microbes could be bacteria, viruses, parasites, or fungi. So, and for these different types of microbes, the type of antimicrobials used to treat them is different. And it's also sometimes referred differently. Antimicrobials is just an umbrella term for all of them. So, but for the purposes of this of the talk and of the conversation we're going to be having today, it's quite important that we distinguish between these different types of antimicrobials. So I'll start first, because I'm a completely biased bacteriologist. I'll start first with antibiotics, which is the antimicrobial that is used to treat infections caused by bacteria. So please note this important difference. Examples, we know many of these ones. We've heard about ampicillin, ampiclox, ciprofloxacin, Flagyl, which is a very important and very famous antibiotic. We've heard about septrin. So all of these, some of them which many of us will be familiar with and which we would have taken at some point in our lifetime, or will take at some point in our lifetime, are called antibiotics. Now, there are specific antimicrobials that are used to treat infections caused by viruses. So these are, again, called antivirals. Now, can you see the pattern? So there are also specific antimicrobials that are used to treat infections caused by parasites, and these are called antiparasitic drugs. An example of which many of us will be familiar with are antimalarials. So there are many of them in our market. So these are not antibiotics; they are called antiparasitic drugs. Example is also some of the deworming tablets that we take, because these are like against roundworm, for instance. And then we'll have another group called the antifungals. These are used specifically for treating infections caused by fungi. The whole point of this slide and this information I'm giving is that you note that there are different groups of antimicrobials that are specific for different types of microbes. So, for instance, you cannot use antibiotics to treat infections caused by viruses. This is a point that we have emphasized severally and we will continue to emphasize, okay? So now that we've established that antibiotics are specifically used to treat infections caused by bacteria, so I'll tell you just a little bit more about bacteria. Bacteria are, again, by the virtue of their names, very small, very, very small. The figures you see on the screen are just really cartoons of, they're not, no bacteria actually looks like that, but they're just cartoons to see that they are quite, you know, I mean, we see them as our enemies sometimes, so it's right to draw them in the most ugly fashion. So I think this represents them very well. They are one cell. So they are made of just one cell. This is sort of scientific jargon, and it's called unicellular. And the point I'm trying to make here is that they are sort of quite simple versions of the sort of what we know as sophisticated life forms. Although they are simple, it doesn't mean that they function in a very simple way. They're actually very elegantly organized systems within these cells that enable them cause the havoc that they cause sometimes, and also enable them do great amount of good in our lives and in the environment. Okay, so we do know that they have no proper organs like human beings would, but they have versions of, they have machinery and setups that do the same functions like respiration as well. So, which is why they are also living, or they are living things. So the previous slide, I showed you what I meant by cartoons, but the next slide is actually a picture of what a bacteria actually looks like. So if you look at the pink, I don't know, can everyone see me? Just, yeah, can everyone see? So if you look at the pink structures on the screen, right? Just focus on that pink. So that is a bacteria, a bacterium cell. So this is a typical rod-shaped bacterial cell, and those characteristics are typical of one of the bacteria that we are quite familiar with. So this is a Salmonella bacteria. The full name, for those of us who are interested in scientific jargon, is Salmonella typhimurium. And this is a picture that was taken in the lab, and this magnified at hundreds of thousands of times. So and this just means that you can't see it with the naked eye. You have to magnify it up to more than 100,000 times to even be able to see this image as it is. So, but you can see, even as minuscule, as tiny, as microbial as it is, you can see the sophistication. And this is actually showing the Salmonella in the act of trying to invade an epithelial cell. And the epithelial cell, although this is a laboratory setup, but the epithelial cell is found in the lining of your small intestine. So you can see this pink bacteria trying to invade and get into your cell. So it's almost capturing it in the act. So although they are small, they are completely sophisticated enough to cause havoc. So we should be interested and concerned about them. Other interesting things about bacteria is that they are found everywhere. You can imagine, if you think about how small they are, that should tell us that it means that they can situate themselves everywhere and anywhere. So they are ubiquitous, which is another scientific jargon to say that they're just everywhere and they're quite happy to exist with everything and on us, inside of them, on the surface and around it, and around several things. So we find them on the surfaces of things. We find them in animals. We find them in the environment. So we find them in the soil, water, essentially everywhere. The other interesting thing is that bacteria can exist in extreme conditions. So it can exist in very, very, very hot or very, very, very cold temperatures. So, and they can also exist in between this very, very hot and very, very cold temperatures. So again, some of the things we're starting to find out, I mean, this might be interesting for those of us who maybe, that there are as many bacterial cells in our body as there are human cells. So there are arguments around when we want to joke about is that, are we made of humans or are we made of bacteria? But my point here is really, the point I'm trying to make here is that we coexist with bacteria, right? And almost all of the time, most times there is absolutely no harm caused by our coexistence with bacteria. just because we've evolved with them over eons of time. So they're perfectly happy to live with us. They bring so much benefits to humans, animals, and the environment in our gut. You will hear more about this when my colleagues will speak later. And they do not usually cause any harm. But sometimes they do cause us harm. They cause diseases, infectious diseases specifically, and because of time, I'm not going to go into great detail about all the bacteria and all the infectious diseases that these bacteria cause. I'm just going to mention a few popular ones, and I say they are popular because we are familiar with the illnesses they cause or the infections they cause, or we know someone who has suffered from this, or we have suffered from them ourselves. So, for instance, Salmonella, we know causes typhoid. Salmonella typhi causes typhoid specifically. Other types of Salmonella will give you diarrhea. Shigella causes dysentery. E. coli, many of us would have heard about it, is one of the more popular bacteria, causes a lot of several types of infections. And for example, we have diarrhea. And in extreme cases, it's usually implicated in sepsis. Many of our clinicians in the audience will be familiar with this. Staphylococcus aureus, we are familiar with this. Every man on the street knows this. We live in, this is a bacteria that actually lives sometimes on the surfaces of things and our skin, but given the right condition, they will cause a skin infection, and they have been implicated in severe cases in clinics, such as in severe issues like sepsis. Okay, so these are just very few examples, and the kind of illness and the infections they cause, and I've just highlighted them because these are the things we're familiar with. So I have mentioned that I've told you a little bit about bacteria. I've told you a little bit about antimicrobial resistance, especially antibiotic resistance. And now I want to kind of highlight something we want to make sure that all of us who, at the end of today's session, a specific take-home message, that you cannot treat these different disinfections that are caused by other types of microorganisms using antibiotics. And the reason is because antibiotics are specific for bacterial infections. So the following infections highlighted in red are not bacterial infections: cold and catarrh, malaria, HIV/AIDS, measles, menstrual pain, detoxing. These are not bacterial infections, so you cannot treat them or cure them with antibiotics. This is the message that we want you to take, one of the key messages we want you to take away from at the end of today. Okay, so if you permit me, this is just, I'm indulging myself here, but we've talked about antimicrobials, but how does bacteria actually become resistant to antibiotics? So we've talked about how sophisticated bacteria is, and we talked about how we should be concerned about it, but how does it actually do this fantastic, mean, and horrible feat? There are several methodologies. They are quite sophisticated, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it just because we don't have enough time, but also because I want us to understand there are several things that they do. First of all, they might block the antibiotic from actually coming in contact with them. They try to push the antibiotic even when it enters into the cell. They try to push it away, or they might actually, what we say, just destroy the antibiotic even before it comes near them. They would exude or excrete certain substances and just try to break the antibiotic down. Or they would decide, okay, so you're an antibiotic, you think you are going to affect this part of me, I'm going to just maybe shield that part of me so that when the antibiotic comes near me, it will not even recognize that part that it's supposed to affect. So it will change the target. Or it will just decide, okay, if this antibiotic is going to affect the way that I breathe, maybe I will just stop breathing oxygen. I will just use something else and use it to metabolize my, feed and eat. So that the antibiotic, even though you destroy a particular system, it has an alternative pathway. And these are several strategies that the bacteria uses to become resistant. So, and then we now ask ourselves, well, if the drug is supposed to target, the antibiotic is supposed to target and kill the bacteria, and resistance occurs only in the bacteria and does not affect, so what's my own? what role am I? Why should I be bothered if the drug is if I'm taking the drug to affect only the bacteria, or as a human being, why should I be concerned what's my own in this matter? Your own in this matter should be that you should be aware that that bacteria, as I said, exists everywhere. It can be found everywhere. So that means bacteria that is resistant can also be found everywhere. And you can find them in humans, so we can find them in communities. And when I mean communities, I mean in our homes, in our schools, in our places of worship, in our marketplaces. And you also find them in hospitals. I mean, it looks like it's a given that you will find resistant bacteria in hospitals, because that's where sick people go to get treated. But also know that these sick people also move between, non-sick communities and back and forth. So you can find bacteria, and in essence, bacteria that is resistant in anywhere you find human beings. We find bacteria that is resistant in animals. And this is now we are starting to understand why this is possible, because even within a household, if we keep animals within the household, they're in very close contact with us. Some of them eat our leftover food, or they go outside and they come back inside in the night, like chickens and goats and sheep. So you will find antibiotic resistant, or you will find bacteria or antibiotic resistant bacteria resident in this animal host. We find them in farmed animals. And when I mean farmed animals, I mean animals that are farmed for commercial purposes. So animals cuts across the spectrum. So this means that you can find bacteria in these animals. So therefore you can find resistant bacteria in those farmed animals. We'll find them in wildlife. And wildlife just means animals that we find in the bush that we don't keep for food, or sometimes we even hunt for food. So if you think about how ubiquitous and how bacteria is everywhere, if you just use that logic and apply, if bacteria is everywhere, that means the bacteria that is resistant could potentially be everywhere. And most importantly, I want to highlight that you can find this bacteria in the environment. You find it in our water, you find it in the soil, and you find it in the rivers, especially if our water and soil and rivers are in very close contact with human waste. So human, animal, and even other environmental waste, when we dispose them into the environment, the other parts of the environment, you could potentially be contaminating the environment with bacteria that is resistant to antibiotics. So a lot of the messaging here, along my slides, you will also see the messaging from the WHO and other bodies telling us how important it is to focus, understand what's happening with antimicrobial resistance, and it will lead up to what we can do as individuals, or as ordinary individuals, to control the spread of the resistance. And one of the reasons we should be concerned about is because it's not a good look. It's not good. What is going to happen if we don't do anything about it? It's going to be bad. So this is a very popular report that was published in 2014 that sort of took stock of what was happening then and what will happen if we do not take any action. So if you look at this graph, I would just like you to focus. I mean, it's too many numbers, but see what just the focus here is. If you look at these figures, represent deaths from several types of both communicable and non-communicable disease. And this is projected numbers of people who would die from these different diseases by the year 2050. This is the end of, we're almost at the end of the year 2020. So 2050 is not too far away from here. It's about 30 years or less than that from now. But if you look at the sizes of these figures, I mean, these polygons, right? You could see that cancer, which causes 8.2 million. Road accidents, 1.2 million people might die from there. Diabetes, 1.5 million people might die if we don't do anything by 2050. But look at this big polygon here. 10 million people, is estimated that 10 million people will die from 2050, from AMR infections that are, if we don't do anything. And this is actually projected that 700,000 people per year. That's a lot of people, more than a lot. And it's actually projected to be a very low estimate. And this will happen if we don't do anything. And just to bring it home furthermore, if one person, one of these figures represents 100,000 people, right? This year alone, this is an estimation of people who would succumb to resistant infections that are resistant to treatment. By 2050, look at the numbers of people. I'm not even going to count, it's just too many. But that means that there's this is why we should be concerned, okay? Okay, so I've sufficiently alarmed everybody. Bacteria is everywhere. They can become resistant to antibiotics and they can spread, and there is fire on the mountain. But I want to temper this with optimism, okay? What can we do? But we now know from research that we have been conducting so far that everyone has a role to play. There is a lot we can do, and that there is a possibility if we all act in collaboration with all of ourselves, that we can halt the spread and reduce the numbers of infection, and thereby reduce the numbers of people that will succumb to infections that are resistant to treatment. So here are the things we can do, okay? So in Igbo, there's an Igbo adage. For those of us who are not Igbo speaking, I will translate it. It says, if a child crawls and bites you, you come down to their level and crawl and bite them back. So if bacteria decides to develop means of avoiding, treatment and becoming resistant and spread, we need to come up with our own tactics of controlling or interrupting their spread, so that we can save ourselves and allow the antibiotics that we have that are effective to continue to be effective, at least in time before new antibiotics will be discovered. Okay, so we start with everyday things we can do. You can reduce the risk of getting an infection so that you can reduce the use or the need for antibiotics. So simple, good hygiene here is very important. Wash your hands properly. We're already becoming experts in hand washing. Now, it is not going to go to waste, but now you have another reason to continue to maintain good hygiene practices. Wash your hands when you use the toilet. Wash your hands when you come back from home, when you know you've been in contact with several people, at your place of work, at a place of worship. Wash your hands properly. Prepare your food hygienically. When you buy food produce from the market, make sure you wash them. Ordinary water is good enough. And cook, boil your water and cook food that's supposed to be cooked sufficiently. Limit close contact with others when you're sick. If you know you're feeling unwell for any reason, try and not expose other people to it. We've already started practicing all these things. So it's important to incorporate them as your everyday lifestyle. It's very little things. You can see how simple these things are, but are things that we found to be very effective in curtailing or reducing your risk of getting an infection, and also reducing your risk of transmitting an infection if you do have one. Okay. Please, if you're sexually active, practice safe sex. Keep your partner safe by protecting yourself, because sexually transmitted diseases, especially those caused by bacteria, can also become recalcitrant to infections. Or you can be infected by a resistant bacteria that is responsible for causing a sexually transmitted disease, or even virus. So please protect yourself. Keep your vaccinations up to date. So for the little ones amongst us that are still being vaccinated, please make sure you take your children to be vaccinated. So because many of these infectious diseases have vaccinations, and if your children are not vaccinated, then they are vulnerable to acquiring resistant infections, which can be difficult to treat. And all of us should be standing up for our right to safe water and sanitation. Again, keep where you live sanitized and keep your water clean and safe. I know it's difficult and it's not easy sometimes for many of us to have access to clean water and clean environment, but the little you can do for yourself, I encourage all of us to please keep doing those things. You can also reduce the spread of antibiotic-resistant bacteria by not sharing antibiotics with others. Speakers from last week emphasized this thing too a lot, because these are the things you can do as a patient or as someone who might want to take care of themselves when they are ill. Please, if you're prescribed antibiotics, please do not share it. You finish your dosage, and before you even before you think about taking antibiotics, before that thought comes into your head, please stop and think and say, and always make sure, first of all, you seek the advice of a qualified healthcare professional before and when you take antibiotics. Okay. I mentioned that antibiotic resistant bacteria can be found everywhere. So one of the things you can do, if we know that it's found in animals, is that if you're working in that field, you again are bound by regulations about how you should use antibiotics, and you must use them responsibly. You must use antimicrobials, whether it's antibiotics or antivirals or antifungals in animals. Animals do get sick, and we need to treat them, or for whatever reasons that allows us to have bigger and better yield, but we must use them responsibly, which also means looking at the regulations within where we work, and only use antimicrobials when prescribed by a veterinarian who is responsible for animals. So please do not self-medicate your animals. The environment is an important and vital part of controlling the spread of antimicrobial resistance. And one of the key ways we can do that is to make sure that we use effective waste treatment procedures so that we can protect the environment and reduce antibiotic resistance. So there are several things that we can do, and I'm happy to answer questions at the end of our session, at the end of the talks, because there are many things that we can start to think about. And it's the main aim here that I want to bring to your to your attention is that you can see that this is multifaceted. So we need people who are working in these different sectors to come together. And all, as I said, everyone has a role to play, including the everyman on the street. There are a couple of things that I'm anticipating, some of the questions that will come about AMR and the COVID pandemic. I won't dwell so much on this because I think I've actually gone over time. So the important things about AMR and COVID, because I think we're thinking at this stage, I'm thinking like everyone else will be thinking, which one should we focus on? There's COVID going on one hand, and people are now telling us that AMR is a pandemic, we should focus on that. It's too much going, 2020 is already too much. But we have to remember that the AMR pandemic was thought to be silent. It has been going on for such a long time. COVID just entered the scene last year, right? But there are things that we can see, that we can learn from how we have handled the pandemic, and there's other things that we can also be wary of, so that we don't allow ourselves slip into a bigger problem that we already have at hand. So the good thing is that we have increased awareness of how infectious diseases spread. So a lot of us know, don't cough in people's faces, faces, wash your hands, etc. So continuing to carry on those good hygienic practices would also help in the control of the spread of AMR. So as I said, we're already washing our hands, so let's continue. We also, on a larger scale, we have developed, many places around the world have now started to strengthen or build up of infrastructure that will help to curtail future and current pandemics. So for AMR, it would be beneficial to carry on with that aspect. The not so good is that now we have people who might be more vulnerable because they have COVID. So there's increased numbers of people who are vulnerable and people who have to go into the hospitals and they will be exposed to AMR. Now, also, when people are ill or when people are scared, we know that with practice and the research we've done so far, that people tend to start to misuse and abuse antibiotics. Remember, COVID cannot be treated by antibiotics because COVID is caused by a virus. So if you start taking antibiotics because you're feeling that you have COVID symptoms, you're abusing and misusing antibiotics. And again, people are overstretched, the hospitals are overstretched. So when people are overstretched, they might not pay so much attention to the infection control practices that they've established. So, and also people are now being, just try to, even if you're a clinician, and most of our clinics are very stretched. So resources are now being moved to treat the more, the the more urgent issues. So AMR might fall by the wayside. These are the things that we want to make sure that does not happen, so that we don't have another pandemic at the end of this current one. Okay, so I've said so many things, but the most important thing I want to say is that we can definitely break the chain of antimicrobial resistance, the spread of antimicrobial resistance, and all of us have a role to play. And I've mentioned a few of the roles that all of us, no matter where you are, no matter who you are, what age you are, what sex you are, what religious background you are, what racial background you are, we can do something. Okay, so thank you very much. And I've used a lot of the figures that I've used there have come from the Africa CDC, WHO Nigeria, and our sponsors are also on this slide. Thank you for your time, and I'll be happy to take any questions you might have.
Wow, thank you so much, Dr. Okoro, for that. That was very, very, very informative. We do have a few questions for you. But just before I go to the questions, let me just see, we have a few people watching us from the UK and Nigeria on Facebook and YouTube. So hello to Sheyi, hello to Fola, and hello to Ejiro. Thank you for joining, and please, if you have questions, make sure you type them in the chat box in Facebook or on YouTube, and we'll try and get them to the speakers. Okay, so let's go to the questions. Dr. Koro, we have a question. What exactly is antibiotic resistance?
Okay, so I will break it down as simply as antibiotic resistance is when a bacteria or when a bacterial species have developed ways and means of becoming resistant to the drug that is used to treat it. If you consider yourself a bacteria, right, and you could and then you invade a human host or animal host, you start to cause you establish an infection. Now there are drugs that have been made over time that are used to treat that infection, right? So yes. A bacteria becomes resistant when that drug is no longer effective. So the drug can no longer kill the bacteria or inactivate it. And that's what we call bacterial, that's what we call resistance.
So you have the drug, you have the bacteria. In the beginning, the drug is able to just knock out that bacteria and kill it off.
Exactly.
Yes, but then with time, due to abuse and misuse, the bacteria, as it were, they're beginning to do shakara that you can't kill me anymore. You're not working as much as you before.
Exactly.
Right?
The bacteria evolves.
Because they've built some kind of defense. Yes.
Exactly. Yes. The bacteria
so they're evolving in their shakara that you were killing me before, you were killing me before, you're not going to kill me again.
The bacteria, yes, okay. It becomes harder, and because if you think about it, they're also trying to survive. So remember, you've brought this thing that's supposed to kill them, and they're looking at ways of surviving. So, after they evolve, they try several strategies, they evolve over time. Remember, this is generation after generation of this bacteria. At a certain time, as you keep giving them this drug, there will be one or two of them that will now formulate ways of making sure that drug is no longer effective on them. So, and little by little, that one or two, generates another one or two, another three or four. And then over time, it will be a population of the ones that are resistant might overtake the populations of the ones that are sensitive to that drug. So you now have a resistant population in your body, or which you can now spread to other things, It's a fascinating,
so that's why
no, carry on.
That's why it's important that we start dealing with it now, because that's quite dangerous, because you have something that's infected your body by giving drugs, and and it's not killing it. So that's quite dangerous, isn't it?
It is dangerous. It's concerning, but I also want to temper that with knowing it's very important that we become aware of it, which is what we're doing now. it's very important that the normal everyday people become aware of it, that this is a problem. And the importance is actually being aware. We're not hoping to transform everybody into specialists here. This is a problem. This is the simple way of explaining how that problem has come to be. But there is something we can do.
Absolutely,
to prevent that problem killing how many thousands of millions of people in the next 20 or 30 years. So it's this whole process hopefully is to become we now know what the issue is, but what can we do?
What can we do? Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so you talked about antiviral medication which are there to deal with viral infection. So there's a question here saying, is there any resistance to antiviral medication?
Yes. So resistance, of course, you see all the categories. So just to reemphasize, antimicrobials is an umbrella term to talk about antibiotics, antivirals, antiparasitic drugs, and antifungal drugs, right? Each of those organisms, all those organisms that you take all those drugs for, can become resistant to those drugs. So there is antiviral resistance, there's anti-malaria resistance. I'm sure all of us have taken all kinds of anti-malaria that after a while it doesn't work again, right? Your doctor will now say, okay, take this other type. So every microorganism has the potential to become resistant.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so you also talked about animals, antibiotic use in animals. So there's a question, what about antibiotics in animal products?
Antibiotics in animal products? So this is a very good question, because I try to make this correlation. If you think about different ways that bacteria can spread, right? So even if they're not resistant, so just think about bacteria. We can find them in food products, right? So if the same roots of transmission of bacteria or any other microorganism, is exactly the same route of transmission for any resistant microorganism, right? If you think about it that way. So it is of concern, because we can get resistant bacteria from the food chain, which is from how the animals are reared and killed and stored and sold to how it gets into our household. Yes, so these are normal routes of transmission of bacteria. So they are normal routes of transmission of resistant bacteria.
Okay. Let me just get one more for you. There's quite a few here. How can taking antibiotics contribute to antibiotic resistance? I think you already spoke about that, but just let's emphasize that, because the question has been asked.
So taking antibiotics.
How can taking antibiotics contribute to antibiotic resistance?
Okay, taking antibiotics after you've been tested and have been seen by a qualified medical practitioner and been prescribed, and you've gone to a legitimate pharmacist and you've bought legitimate drugs, does not necessarily contribute to antibiotic resistance. It's the misuse and abuse. So please, the distinction here is, if you're ill and you go to hospital and you do a culture, which is a culture and sensitivity test, which is what you do specifically for a suspicion of if the doctor suspects a microbial infection, and you get prescribed antibiotics, you are supposed to take your antibiotics, but that is your prescription. So you taking prescribed antibiotics, it's supposed to take care of you, but you abusing it or misusing it, and we've discussed the several ways that you can abuse and misuse it over the last 2 Saturdays, is what contributes to resistance. So if you have been prescribed, please don't take it with, I don't want that confusion to exist. And and the medical practitioners in the group can also speak to it. If you're ill and you've been prescribed, please take your medication. Take it the way you've been prescribed. Don't be scared to say, oh, I'm contributing to it.
Okay.
But if you are not taking it the way it has been prescribed, and you're treating yourself without knowing not actually knowing what is causing your infection.
Yeah.
That's misuse and abuse. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that last point. Very important. Yes. Okay. Is it okay? So we're talking about this antimicrobial resistance, antibiotic resistance. Is it the question? The person is asking: is it my body that becomes resistant to the antibiotics?
No, it is not your body. It is the microorganism that is causing the infection in your body that could potentially become resistant if antibiotics are abused or misused. So it's not the human being, because the organism, the antibiotic is not targeting you. It's targeting the bacteria in the body that has caused the infection that you want to treat. So you as a human does not become resistant. The bacteria becomes resistant. And the reason you are affected as a human being is it means that the infection that you have that is caused by this bacteria that is no longer responding to the drug might linger. It becomes harder to treat. So you're ill for longer, and you're feeling miserable, and you then can potentially spread that bacteria that is now resistant to other people. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much, Dr. Okoro. I'm sure more questions will be coming in, and I will come back to you as they come in.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Right. So we've had Dr. Okoro, talking to us about antimicrobial resistance, and so on. And she's answered the questions. It was very informative. I am just going to say hello to a few people who are watching, and thank you once again for joining. Apostle Mark Samuel on Facebook, thank you for joining us. You're welcome. I'm going to go now to our second speaker. Because of time, let me move on to our second speaker. Her name is Mrs. Bukola Amujo. She's a dietitian at the Federal Medical Center in Abeokuta, Ogun State, Nigeria. She's passionate about the health of the nation, and she's a dedicated wife and mother. Mrs. Amujo, over to you. Thank you for being here. You can go ahead and share your screen as well for your slides. If you're
I'm
able
still having
to.
problem. I'm not able to.
Okay, just go ahead.
Can I continue?
All right, you just go ahead then. Absolutely.
Okay.
Over to you. Yes.
My name is Amujo Bukola. My topic is healthy diet, immunity, and prevention to diseases. My topic is healthy diet, immunity, and prevention of disease. First of all, because we are talking about food, we are talking about healthy diet. What is food? Food is one of the basic human needs. Food nutrients have the ability to provide, promote, and support social health when they are adequate. The kind of food you eat and how often you eat them have a major influence on your emotional and physical development. It is never too late to start eating an healthy food. What is unhealthy food? Whatever your age, you will always need a good supply of nutrients. That is all the 6 classes of nutrients that we have. And this is easily found in a well-balanced diet. You may feel reasonably healthy and think that you are eating the right thing, but instead you are not eating the recommended intake of every other nutrient that you need to eat. So we are going into healthy diet. Healthy diet promotes the body with essential nutrients. Eating healthy has a whole lot of benefits. That is ranging from living longer, having more energy, thinking clearly, and boosting your immune system. For you to eat healthy, that means all the 6 classes of nutrients must be in your diet. For you to eat healthy, that means your immune system must be strong. For you to eat healthy, that means you want to prevent some diseases that maybe is hereditary in your family, and you can take it. If you are eating healthy, then that diseases can be prolonged, maybe at an older age. Healthy eating, such as skipping of meals and eating the right quantity at the right time. I will talk about skipping of meals. There are so many times that we skip our meals in the form of some people saying that I want to reduce my weight. I want to go down. Some people, they skip their meals knowingly or unknowingly, which is not good for the body. Coupled with elder lifestyle factor helps promote good health and improves quality of life of an individual. So you must stop the habit of skipping of meals if you want to eat, if you want to have an healthy diet, if you want to live healthy, you have to stop that habit. And any food that is not life-threatening, when it is consumed, is considered healthy food. I'll make an example of rice. Some people have the preferential treatment of taking rice. We are not saying eating rice alone is bad, but if you are not adding any other product, because we know that rice is the main source of rice is carbohydrates, and you are not eating any other thing to enrich what you are eating, that is your beans or your moi moi, or just to fortify your food with protein nutrients, then and other type of vegetables or fruits, then your food is not balanced. Guidelines to living an healthy life. Just like I've said, timing of meals is very important, just like our drugs that we are eating. Our drugs, there are some of our drugs that they tell us to eat twice daily. They tell us to take twice daily. There are some that they tell us to take thrice daily. So, and everything has timing. That also have to do with our food also. It has to have timing. Timing of our food. Your breakfast is very, very important. Very, very important. You have to make sure that you are taking your. I will take myself as an example. For me to eat healthy, I make sure that between 8 and 9, I take my breakfast, which is the king of all the meals. Then my lunch between 1 and 2, even if I'm going to take any snacks, it will be fruits instead of just taking junks. And my lunch will be between 1 and 2, and my dinner between 6 and 7. There is a timing for all these foods so that the food will be able to digest and you'll be able to get ready for another meal that is coming in. Do you usually eat 1 meal or 3 meals or more at a day? If you are eating more than 3 meals at a day, you are not helping yourself. At least if you are eating like 3 times in a day, and any other time that you are feeling hungry, you feel like eating any other food, then you can take snacks. But what type of snacks can you take? You can take your fruit or your vegetable, because they add no calorie to you, and they are the kind of nutrients that you can always take. Eating 1 large feast a day is not very healthy. There are so many times that we skip our breakfast and we want to combine the breakfast and lunch together. We are not helping ourselves that way. We have to make sure that everybody, even if it's just small at a time that you can take, even if it's just small at a time that you can take, it's better than combining the 2 together and now consuming the lunch, the breakfast and the lunch together, which will not help the digestion system. It is not better to vary meals time. Your bodies thrive well on a regular schedule. Just like I've said earlier, one of our worst habits relates to time we eat, not just what we eat. The digestive machinery works best when you give time to digest 1 meal before the next meal comes. I've explained that already. So skipping of meals must be avoided totally, because it is the king of all meal. This may expose one of the temptation of sugary things or fatty snacks, which is not healthy for our system. Eating breakfast we should always make sure that we eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, and dinner like a pauper. I will explain that. We know that after eating our dinner, we have slept all through the night. It's just like we are fasted. So early in the morning, the body needs food to replenish the body. So we must make sure that we are eating our breakfast as early as possible. And our lunch, we can still eat our lunch the way we want it. And our dinner must be a very light food so that it can digest early before going to bed. Because there are some people that form the habit of going to bed even after eating their dinner, which is not even healthy, because even the food will not have digested at that time, and which will not, because the food is not digested, then there'll be a lot of fat into the body because those food were not digested. Skipping breakfast must be avoided totally. I think I've said that. So what are the type of food that you can eat that will make your body to be healthy? We have to make sure that you're eating fiber-rich food. Fiber-rich diet has been shown to help prevent colon cancer, high blood cholesterol, hypertension, diabetes, piles, etc. Our refined carbohydrate food should be substitutes for fiber-rich, and refined and unrefined carbohydrate food, such as whole grains, that is all wheat products, beans, tuwo of fada, which is in Nigeria here, our oatmeal, and vegetable and whole fruits. These are the fiber-rich food that we are supposed to be consuming richly, because they'll help your digestive system. They will not make you to have constipation, and they'll help the system to flow easily. So moderate, simple carbohydrate food that can be eaten are moi moi, ekuru, cocoyam, shapala, that is here in Nigeria, oatmeal, the beans corn, that is egbodo. We have amala, we have eba, we have inyo. They should be, because they are moderate, simple carbohydrates, we should take them in minimal meal. But fiber food should be the one that we should be taking in high quantity. I'm very sorry. Yeah, on my slide, I have the picture of all grains meal that we can take. Yeah, I have the picture here, but I'm sorry that we are not able to see them. Just like I said, fruit and vegetable, they contain fiber. They contain fiber, and those are the kind of snacks that we can take even after eating our meal. For diabetic patients that want to be healthy, even after taking your meal, if you have any time that you feel like taking other meals, instead of taking another meal before lunch, you are entitled to take you are entitled to take your fruits and your vegetable, which can nourish your body and can sustain you before you take your lunch. The fruit and vegetable contain anti-cancer substances known as antioxidants, and they attack molecules called free radicals. Example of food that we can take freely: we have orange, we have pawpaw, we have pineapple, we have mango, we have watermelon, we have apple, we have guava. We have so many fruits that we are entitled to that you can eat. But there are some restrictions for diabetic patient, for diabetic patient. But if you're not diabetic, then you can take every fruit that is readily available to you. Just like when we are talking about healthy diets, I also want to encourage us that we can take low-fat milk. I will be talking of milk now. Low-fat and non-fat milk, or non-fat milk. That is, low-fat or non-fat milk can be used by the elderly, are unsweetened soy milk, skimmed or fat milk. We are not entitled, because we have to make sure whenever we want to eat our diet, we have to make sure that we are looking into our history, into our family. Is hypertension hereditary in my home? is diabetes hereditary, that will guide you on the way you are going to eat your food. Because you cannot just eat anyhow. If there is history of diabetes in your lineage, or there is history of hypertension in your lineage, that will help your eating habits, and that will help you to eat healthy. So that even if there is history of diabetes, it will be you will be able to move it to an older age before even it can come. It will not come into your system at the age of 40 or 30. And so eating healthy can help you with that. So we have so many milk in the market that we can eat. We have 3 Crown here in Nigeria. We have Olympic. We have Marvel. They are low-fat milk. They are skimmed milk that you can take. Whenever you get to the market and you want to buy any milk, make sure that you are getting skimmed milk or low-fat milk. That is what is good for our body. Snacking, I want to talk about snacking. Snacking between meals as important as food consumed around the family dining. So fruits, I've said that earlier, food is very important in our snacking, and vegetables. Junks are not food with they are food with high calorie, but very little or no nutrients. So they are not healthy for our system. So we should make sure that we are trying as much as possible to avoid every junk food. Fluid can be consumed in form of water. It can be consumed in form of juice. It can be consumed in form of healthy teas. And they can be taken liberally. One can live on several weeks without food, but without water, one can die in just a few days. So fluid is very important at every point in time. I will even encourage you to always take fluid water, even if at the first thing in the morning when you wake up. It helps your digestive system. It helps to prepare your digestive system for food. So taking fluid is very good for our system, and is very healthy for us. I'll be going into immunity. What is immunity? It is a condition of being able to resist a particular disease, particularly through preventing development of pathogenic microorganisms or counterfeiting the effect of its products. When we are talking about immunity, the immune system produces the immune response to defend the body from foreign substances, cells, tissues. It protects the body from disease and infection. So if you are eating healthy, then you are also building your immune system. If you are eating healthy, then your immunity will be high. It will be able to fight any kind of diseases that is coming into your system. But if you're not eating healthy, then there is no way the body will be able to fight any kind of infection, any kind of diseases that is coming into the body. So eating healthy is very important in talking about immunity. Immunity can either be innate, that is born with some level of immunity, adaptive, that is developed when the body is exposed to disease or when the child is immunized. That can help your immunity. If there is an immunization that is being taken, it can help to fight against one disease or the other. We have type of immunity. We have innate immunity. We have adaptive, and we have passive immunity. I want to talk about habits that can damage your immunity. There are some habits that we do every day that can damage our immunity. And what are these habits that we are talking about? Poor sleep habits, poor sleeping habits. If you are not sleeping well, you are not helping your immunity that way. If you are just sleeping between 4 hours to 6, if you are just sleeping between 4 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours, your immunity will be low. But if you can sleep between 7 to 8 hours, then you are building your immunity that way. Excessive sugar intake is also not good for our immunity. If you often eat something sweet or drink to satisfy your cravings, can lead to poor immunity. If you need to eat something sweet, then you can go for fruits. That will help. Instead of taking all these carbonated drinks, instead of taking all these things that will not help your immunity. And also, smoking also, it will not help your immunity when you are smoking. There's toxic substance such as ammonia, nicotine, toluene. It will not help your immune system. All these things can affect your immunity. Too much caffeine, too much coffee in your tea. Too much coffee also can stimulate your system. It will also increase stress level in your body. It should release a stress hormone like cortisol. So it will not help your immunity at all. So those are the bad habits that we are talking about that can damage your immunity. And also eating junk food, just like I said earlier, when you are eating junk food, because there are no or less or little nutrients in this junk food that you are eating. So it is not good for you. It is not good for the system. It is not good for the immunity. When you are saying that you want to build your immunity, it's when you are eating a lot of junk food, excessive junk food, then you are not building immunity. When you are eating junk food that is high in saturated fat and eating excessive fat, eating excessive fat, it can damage immunity, your immune system, and even there will be signs of obesity development. And when we are talking about obesity can affect the white blood cells the white blood cells, and there will be multiple and produce antibiotics that will make you prone to infection. Another thing I want us to, another thing is sedentary lifestyle. When you're having a sedentary lifestyle, you are not helping yourself. You have to make sure that even the kind of work you're doing will make you to sit most of the time. You have to make sure even after working hour, instead of driving home, why don't you take bus? Why at some time, even before you get home, even if you are with a car, before you get home, you can drop from the car and take a walk home. Or even after getting home, make sure that you are doing some exercises at home. Make sure at least 30 minutes you are exercising yourself. Because sedentary lifestyle in the office, 8 hours a day is not helping you. It's not helping the system in your body. It's not helping your immunity, and it's not helping at all. Another thing we'll be going into is that the amount of salt we are taking can damage our immunity, especially when it comes to hypertension. Some people that are hypertensive, maximum salt intake for an adult per day is 5 grams for a family of no history of blood pressure. So if there is family history, then the salt may be reduced to 2 grams per day. So salt intake, we must try as much as possible to reduce the level of salt we are taking. Even if we look back in the 80s, in the 70s, our grandmothers, they don't use all this Maggi that we are using. Why can't we just try as much as possible to spice our food with onions? We can use our local spices to spice our food instead of using all this Maggi in the market, which is not good for our health. Avoid eating salt on table. Table also consume salt. If you are taking salt on table, it's also consumed in various processed food, in addition to one or natural food as well of when we are cooking. So adding salt on table is not good for our health, and is not good for the immunity. I want to talk about disease prevention. Disease prevention is a procedure through which individuals, particularly those who risk factor for a disease, are treated in order to prevent diseases from occurring. So when we are talking about disease prevention, we are talking about eating healthy. When we are talking about disease prevention, we are talking about immunity. These two things will help you to prevent diseases coming into your body, because they are the one that will fight all these things. They are the one that will be your shield But if the defense of the immunity is down, then there'll be a lot of diseases coming into the body. So disease prevention I've said that the aim of disease prevention is to minimize the burden of diseases and associated risk factor. We have different level of prevention, of disease prevention. We have the primordial prevention, we have the primary prevention, and we have the secondary, and we have the tertiary. Ways by which disease can be prevented. We have healthy habits prevent germs and infection diseases. I've said that earlier. We have to make sure that you are eating healthy. Eating healthy diet prevent disease and infection disease from spreading in your system. That is safe handling and preparation of food. How do you prepare your food? From the market to your home. How do you handle your cooking? So that will help in making your food hygiene. So practicing hygiene in cooking is something that you have to make sure that you are doing regularly. We have to make sure that even before cooking, because we are coming from outside, there are a lot of these things that we have touched that are not healthy. We have to make sure that we are washing our hands. We wash our hands before cooking. We make sure that we are practicing hygiene at the time of cooking. Frequent hand washing is very important in preventing disease. So cleaning and disinfection of commonly used surface. That is, in our kitchen, we have to make sure that all our food are covered. All the surfaces on our kitchen, they are tidy up. They are not debit of food on our kitchen table. It is well cleaned up so that there will be no flies flying around that can bring any kind of diseases into the food that you are cooking or you are eating. Avoid sharing of personal items like toothbrush and razor blade. Those can also prevent disease. Vaccination. Taking vaccination, putting our children to vaccination at babies, even at adults. We have some vaccination that is meant for adults that you can also take, because all these vaccination that we are giving to our children, they have an expiring date, even maybe after 10 years. So we have to make sure that we renew them. We renew all this vaccination so that they can still keep our immunity and prevent diseases in our body. Self-isolation during sicknesses. We know we are in the period of COVID-19. We have to make sure that we isolate ourselves when there is sicknesses, just to not infect our neighbor, our children, our siblings. We have to make sure of that. Now I'm going to tips to healthy diet, developing strong immunity and disease prevention. First of all, we have to make sure that you try as much as possible to maintain an ideal body weight. Increase consumption of fiber food. Increase consumption of fiber of foods, such as ogun. I've said that earlier. We have to make sure that we increase our consumption of fiber. I've made an example is of father rice, our wheat, our oats, our wheat bread, our wheat meal, our cereals. They are whole. Our green leafy vegetable. We have to make sure that we are taking all this. Even we do our water leaf, our okra, our cucumber, our garden egg, our fruits. We have to make sure that we are taking all this. Eating healthy protein, eat more of plant-based fruits. Eat more of plant-based protein is very necessary. We have locust beans, we have lean meat, we have poultry, we have fish, we have dairy products. Reduce the consumption of simple sugar and saturated fat. They are not good for our system. We have to make sure we are reducing. I've said that earlier. So we have to make sure that we are reducing our simple sugar. We have to make sure we are reducing the consumption of alcohol and caffeine. I've said that, but alcohol is not something that we have to make sure that we have to make sure that we reduce the consumption of alcohol, because it's not good for our health, and it can also reduce our immunity. We have to make sure that we eat variety of food. We have some people that they are used to eating maybe rice or beans or one particular form of food. They can eat it morning, afternoon, night. You have to make sure you eat varieties of food. And even for children, because they are growing, we have to make sure that we are giving them varieties of food. Don't let us limit ourselves to one particular source of food. Just because you are so keen to that food, you are eating that particular food almost all the time. I'll use an example of Nigeria. We eat most of the time rice. Some people can eat rice in the morning, rice in the afternoon, rice in the night, which is not healthy for our health, is not healthy for our immunity, because we are not building our immune system that way. We have to make sure that you drink plenty of water and eat hydrated foods such as cucumber, our soup, vegetable salad. We have to make sure that we are taking a lot of that, because those are the things that will help our immunity. Be physically active and sleep 6 to 8 hours in a day. We should make sure that we are active physically. We exercise each day. We exercise. If you can't do it in the morning, make sure you are doing it in the evening. Maybe when it is not sunny. I'm not saying that we should go into the sun and start exercising. No, but make sure that you are doing the kind of exercise that your body can take. Because we have some people that are having one illness or the other they are treating. So you have to make sure that you are going at the speed of your body. You have to make sure that if it's skipping that you can tolerate, skip. If it's just running around your compound, run a little bit. If it's just taking a walk that you can tolerate, then do that. But just make sure you are going at your speed. So that is all I have for us today, that we should make sure we are following all this diet, make sure that we are eating our fiber-rich food, make sure that we are consuming our low-fat milk. We should make sure that we are taking a lot of water. We should make sure that we are taking a lot of fruits that are healthy for us. And if you know that you are diabetes, if you know that you are hypertensive, you have to make sure that you are eating healthy and you are not obese, because that will prone other diseases to come in. And if you know that you want to reduce your weight, you want to go on a reducing diet, you have to make sure that you are not skipping your meal. Make sure what you can just do there is just make sure that you are reducing the quantity of food, the quantity of calorie you are eating. Make sure that you are eating little calorie. Use fruit to use fruit and vegetable for your snacks. Eat little in the afternoon. Eat little in the night, at your dinner. And if you want to have any kind of snacks, make sure you are taking your vegetable and you are taking your fruit. That will help in reducing weight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mrs. Amujo. Thank you. That was also very, very informative. I have a question. Do we have skimmed milk in Nigeria? Oh, hold on. You muted yourself. 1 second.
Okay.
Yeah, go on.
We have skimmed milk here in Nigeria, and we have so many of them. And I mentioned some. I said 3 Crown is a skimmed milk. Olympic.
3 Crown, okay.
3 Crown is skimmed milk.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And we have Olympic. Olympic milk is skimmed milk. We have Marvel. Okay. Those are the skimmed milk that we have in Nigeria. We have skimmed milk. We have 3 Crown. We have Olympic. We have Marvel. We have Dano's Dano Milk Zero. That means that is also a skimmed
milk.
Alrighty.
Okay. So we have the full fat. We have the semi-skimmed, and we have the skimmed.
Yes. The one that is not skimmed, they are the evaporated milk. And the one we have in Nigeria, they are peak milk. They are evaporated milk, which is good for the children. But if you are growing older, it's better to go for skimmed milk.
Okay. All right. And what's the difference between the three? Why is it when you're getting older that the skimmed milk we should use that more?
Okay. We are recommending that because as we are growing older, because of the way we eat here in Nigeria.
Okay.
Most of us are not eating healthy. So we are prone to so many diseases. You will see a 25-year-old having hypertension. You see a 20-year-old having diabetes. And so we encourage to prevent all these diseases. We go for low-fat milk so that we can prevent all the diseases from coming in.
Okay, so the difference between the three is that semi-skimmed, is it the amount of fat between the three? What is the, that's
yes. The fat content that is there, we don't need them again as we are growing up. But the children, because of the energy and the activities they do, and because of their brain, they still need it. But we as adults, yes, the full fat, they need it. But we don't need it as we are growing.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a few questions for you. Is there any link between breastfeeding and immunity?
Yes. Breast milk is a milk that is all for babies, for the infant. It's a milk that we are supposed to give to our infant for 6 months of life. So by giving your baby's breast milk, you are building the immunity of that child. You will not need to be taking the child maybe the child will not have any diarrhea. The child will not, you don't need to be taking the child to see the doctor at any point in time, because the child is taking exclusive breast milk. But if you are giving your child all this canned milk, all this baby canned milk, and most times, most mothers will always make one mistake or the other, which will not be healthy for this child, and the child will be prone to diarrhea and all kinds of diseases. So breast milk will build your baby immunity and it will build the baby's brain. So breast milk is the best for infant for 6 months of life.
Okay, great. So breast milk, 6 months.
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned about buying quality food. So we have a question here saying, how can I make sure I buy quality food?
How can you buy quality food? I will make tomato as an example. We have what we call esha here in Nigeria. Esha are the type of tomato that, how will I put it? That one insects will have do a lot of things on it. They are not hygiene. They are not fresh. It has bruises on the body of the tomato, which is not good for us. But do you know that is what most people go for here in Nigeria, because it is very cheap. And what we need is the tomato that is fresh, without any bruise, without any insect bite, without anything, that is all. That is the one that is good for us. Even there, I myself, I can eat it raw, because it's good for us to eat raw. But do you know that most people here in Nigeria, because of the economic here in Nigeria, they go for the cheap one, which we call here in Nigeria esha. That is their spoilt one, and they go for it, and that is what most people eat. But I will tell you, it's not the best. So when we are talking about healthy food,
quality food, yes,
quality food, buy what is old, that does not have any patches. Even if you are buying vegetable, make sure that the green leafy vegetable is not yellowish in color, it's green. That is what you are buying. And another thing, if you are buying green leafy vegetable and you are bringing it to me, I know of some people, because even that is what my mother taught me as I was growing up. If you want to cook vegetable in our home, you have to boil the vegetable before cooking it. But it is not good, because the nutrient is already is gone with the water, and we are going to pour the water away. We have to make sure after slicing the vegetable, you are cooking your vegetable that way, without putting your vegetable to hot water. Cook it all like that, so you can get the nutrients into your body. So eating lots of vegetable, taking lots of fruits, making sure that you are not eating just one type of nutrients. Maybe rice and small meat, and let me ship this in. We have some of our mothers here in Nigeria. The dad will take the highest size of meat in the home. The mother will take the next. Maybe they'll give daddy 3 or 4 type of meat. The mother will take like 2, and they'll give their children half of the meat or half of the fish. And they don't know that what they are just doing into their body is they are damaged because they don't need that kind of excess protein into their body again. But these children that they are growing, whatever kind of meat I'm eating, I'm just using to maintain my body. But these children, they need those protein to grow. So we should make sure that we stop that habit. Let us make sure that we are giving our children the breast. We should make sure that we are giving them good meat, good fish into their food. And we have some people that they don't even give meat to their children. Instead of that, why don't you just go for egg? Egg is cheap here in Nigeria. We have 15 naira. You can go for egg instead of making the food of the child go empty like that. So with that, the child is growing and the child is getting enough nutrient into the body. I don't know if I'll be able to answer your question.
Yes, and then I'm going to come off that with another question. But before I do that, we just talked about breastfeeding.
Yes, ma'am.
And immunity. So
yes.
What about for those who cannot breastfeed?
For those that cannot breastfeed, we have wet breastfeeding. That is, if you can give your baby, because we have people that have the issue of breastfeeding, maybe they have issue with their breast or the mother passed away. You can give the baby to somebody that is nursing baby, that is nursing the baby to breastfeed your baby for you. Or if you're not doing that, then you can go for canned milk. Canned milk. We have Nan One, we have Cow and Gate. We have so many of the cow milk. We have so many of the canned baby milk that you can get for your baby. But it's expensive. So we always encourage, it's expensive here, because the baby must take it. Because if you follow the instruction on the label, the baby must take that canned milk for 3 days. But here in Nigeria, we'll see some mothers giving that baby that canned milk, one canned milk for a week, for 2 weeks. That means they are not mixing it appropriately, which is not healthy for the baby. So we should make sure that we can give the baby to somebody that is nursing a baby, or we should go for baby canned milk. But we should make sure that we are following the instruction. And let me chip this in. We have some mothers that are HIV, that we cannot say they cannot breastfeed. They can breastfeed before the baby starts teething. But if they cannot do mixed feeding, they have to make sure that they are going for exclusive breastfeeding if they want to do breastfeeding, or they are going for the canned milk. That means they will not be breastfeeding. They will only give the baby the canned milk. We don't want mixed feeding, because if they are doing mixed feeding, the baby will be prone to the virus to get infected. So you have to make sure, as an HIV mother, you are giving your baby exclusive breast milk, or you are giving your child the baby canned milk. And if the baby is getting close to the stage of teething, you have to stop breastfeeding if you are doing exclusive breastfeeding, so that the baby will not cut into your breast milk and will not get infected.
Okay, thank you. Just a very quick one. You mentioned other alternatives to protein, and you mentioned egg. Can you just give 2 or 3 more examples about alternatives to meat and fish?
Well, even milk is a source of protein.
Okay.
You can give milk to your baby.
So we got milk, egg.
Yes, milk.
Mm-hmm. 2 more.
We have milk, egg. We have fish.
Okay.
We have fish. We have milk. We have meat.
No. For those who cannot afford meat and fish. For those who cannot afford meat and fish, we have milk, egg.
For those that can also. Okay. We have meat. We have soya milk. Okay. You can make soya milk. We can buy soya beans and process it into soya milk. It's also something. It's also a source of protein that you can give to your child.
Okay. All right. Okay. So those are alternative protein sources. Okay. Do we have any comments from any of our other speakers here about some of the questions we've asked already? Any comments? If you do, let me just indicate and let me know. No? Okay. So thank you very much, Mrs. Amujo. We'll move on to our third speaker now. Our third speaker is Farm Folashade Olufunke Lawal. She's the managing director of Victory Drugs, Lagos. She's a fellow of the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria, a Commonwealth Professional Fellow, and an associate member of the Royal Pharmaceutical Society of Great Britain. She's also a member of the Clinical Pharmacists Association of Nigeria. She's very passionate about the rational use of medicines. She has worked as a volunteer for AIDS coordinator for Scripture Union in Nigeria, in the Lagos region. She always engages in several health talks and outreaches, always with the goal of improving patient health. So, Mrs. Lawal, from Lawal, over to you. Do you want to share your slides?
Yes, I want to share. Yes, enable me.
Oh, right. Okay. We'll just make you co-host. 1 second. Okay, go ahead. It's done. Okay.
Thank you very much for having me. I know our time is fast spent, so I'll try not to take much of our time, and then I'll try not to overflow what the other speakers have done justice to. Let me appreciate Mrs. Bukola Amujo for a job well done, and Dr. Chinyere Okoro, you've made it easier for me. So we might not go into all of this. What antimicrobials Dr. Chinyere has said a lot about what antimicrobials are. She has also delved into antimicrobial resistance. I have this WHO pictorial on misusing and overusing antibiotics. And it says that when we misuse or overuse antibiotics, that all of us are at risk, like Dr. Chinyere has said earlier. Once there's a problem there, everybody is a potential victim. So we'll look at, according to WHO, the main drivers of antimicrobial resistance are misuse and overuse of antibiotics. That's, we cannot overflow. It's been said repeatedly, and then we need to look at that. So what we'll do this afternoon here is to look at, we will look at a few examples. Why do we use antimicrobials in the first case? It's because we have infection. If there's no infection, there'll be no need for antimicrobials. And even when we have infection, it is appropriate that the infection is properly defined by the doctor so that the appropriate antimicrobial is used. But what I want us to note here today is that if we don't have infection, we will not even have the need for antimicrobials. So is it possible for us to prevent infection? I want us to think through that. Is it possible? Yes, we will look at a case study here. I have Mama Abigail here. She has a bowl of water in her house. Every time they want to eat, she puts out water in a bowl and everybody washes their hand inside that same bowl of water. Apart from mealtime, they do not wash their hands. About 2 weeks back, she was not well and the doctor diagnosed typhoid fever. Doctor placed her on antibiotics to take every 8 hours. Mama Abigail thought that was too cumbersome, and so she decided to take antibiotics just twice daily instead of the 8 hourly that the doctor asked her to take. I want us to think through this story because we will have to answer some questions as we go along. Mama Abigail noticed some itchy rash on her daughter Abigail, and this rash spread very fast. She decided, instead of taking Abigail to the hospital to see a doctor or going to a trusted healthcare professional, she decided to share antibiotics with Abigail. The rash spread more, and later it was diagnosed as
Abigail had chickenpox. Now my questions are this. Do you think anything Mama Abigail did would have contributed to her coming down with typhoid infection? If we think critically, she was not hygienic enough. She would not wash her hands except she wanted to eat. And even at that, washing hands inside a bowl of water is not the best, it's not the right way to wash hands. When we want to wash our hands, we need to have soap and water under running. The water has to be poured over our hand. If we don't have a tap, then we can have somebody pour that water over our hands so that the soap that we have washed, after lathering the soap in our hands, the soap is meant to dissolve the germs, and then we wash them out, not store them up somewhere. Now, do you think that Abigail's chickenpox could have been prevented? Do you think so? Yeah. Abigail's chickenpox could have been prevented because there's what we call chickenpox vaccine. Dr. Chinyere also mentioned that. Mrs. Bukola mentioned that in our talk, that we need to look at diseases that vaccines can prevent and allow ourselves to get prevented by submitting to these vaccines. Our children, we should get them immunized. There are vaccines available for adults too. We should find out about them and protect ourselves from infection. Now, what could Abigail and her mom have done differently? I think there are many things here. Number one, it is not right for Abigail's mom to share her antibiotics with Abigail. Unfortunately for Abigail, it was a viral infection she had, and antibiotics and viral infections, they don't go together. Your doctor might decide to place you on antibiotics when you have viral infection if the doctor suspects that this infection has also allowed in bacterial infection. If there's a co-infection going on, like somebody who has chickenpox on a normal day would not need antibiotics. But if it is infected with bacteria, then the doctor would want to put you on antibiotics to remove the bacterial infection. Otherwise, it's a self-limiting thing. So sharing antibiotics with Abigail was injurious to Abigail. At the same time, she also compromised the quantity that she was to use, because our doctor gave her antibiotics to use every 8 hours, and she decided to take it every 12 hours. That way she has used less than what she should use. And the bacteria, those are the drivers of antibiotic resistance. When you use the lower dose or you use them at the wrong time, because there's a level that these antibiotics must get to in your body to completely deal with the bacteria, or if it's microbes, whatever, to completely deal with them as expected. There's a level, and that is time dependent. So if it has to be every 8 hours, it just has to be every 8 hours. Once you compromise that, then you have given the bacteria the opportunity to develop resistance to the offender, to the antibiotics. I'm sure we can think through, we might still be able to find one or two other things that Abigail and her mom could have done, as Abigail and her mom could have done differently. Well, the bulk of the blame is on Abigail's mom. She was in charge. She was meant to protect her daughter. She was meant to make sure that the best happened to her daughter. But you see, the age we are now, everybody is learning. Abigail too can learn. We have said that these messages are taken to schools. So Abigail can calmly tell her mom and say, Mom, we were taught in school not to share antibiotics. We were taught in school about antimicrobial resistance. So all of us have to learn. Now let's look at another case here. This is the case of George. George was not feeling fine. He had cough, catarrh, fever, headache, could not eat. He then sent his younger brother John to buy any antibiotics from a shop nearby. A shop, not a pharmacy store, not a pharmacy, from a shop nearby. John had just learned about infections and antimicrobial resistance in school. So he refused to go. As far as he was concerned, George had malaria and therefore did not need antibiotics. What do you think? Do you have any advice for George? Do you have any advice for John as well? Let's think through this. Yeah, let's look at George first. George was not feeling fine. He had cough, catarrh, and fever. He had headache, he could not eat. Those are symptoms that cut across so many things. It could be anything. It could be common cold, it could be an infection, it could be malaria, it could be anything. So he needs to find out what is wrong before he embarks on what to take. Ideally, George should have visited his doctor or his trusted healthcare professional, and then he would have got the best advice on what to do with himself. Malaria, for instance, can only be diagnosed if a test is run to show that there are malaria parasites. You cannot just use symptoms to decide that you have malaria. You cannot also just use symptoms to decide that, oh, okay, this is a bacterial infection necessarily. We have to allow our trained healthcare professionals to guide us there so that we're not contributing in any way to the problem of antimicrobial resistance. So I want us to think through. I'm sure you have advice for George. And idea John too he tried by at least not allowing George to abuse or misuse antibiotics. But he was already insinuating malaria. He was diagnosing malaria. No. John could not diagnose malaria from symptoms. So George should have gone to see his pharmacist or either healthcare professional or his doctor if he had access to the hospital. Now let's think through this. Which is better really? Preventing getting sick or getting sick and then looking for treatment? I'm sure we all agree that immunize. So there's a huge benefit from preventing sickness rather than waiting for the sickness to come and then we start to get rid of this sickness. When we do that, sometimes we take the wrong step. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Lawal. Yes, it's come off. Okay. So the message you were giving us there is prevention is better than cure. Mrs. Lawal?
Yes, please.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. So I said the summary of what you were saying is prevention is better than cure.
Yes. It's better we prevent ourselves from getting ill than when we allow ourselves to get ill and then start looking for. Yes, if we get ill, we should look for solution to whatever is wrong. But we'll do a lot more benefit to ourselves preventing the infection.
Okay. And then in terms of where to go, when you've seen your doctor, you've got a prescription, where should you be going? Where should the patient be going?
You should take your prescription to the pharmacist because the pharmacist is trained about medications. So the pharmacist will make sure that you get the right drug. Pharmacist will guide you to use it the right way. The pharmacist will make sure that you get the right quantity. And every other thing you need to know about the drugs.
All right, you mentioned about hand washing and how we should, wash our hands, not just in a bowl and it's there because you need water to be flowing over your hands and washing away so that the bacteria is not or organisms are not on in one place. So how does washing your hand prevent antibiotic resistance?
Oh, okay, when we wash our hands, we reduce the chances of getting ill. For example, according to a study done by World Health Organization, in Nigeria, we could reduce deaths from diarrhea in children under 5 by as much as 30% just by washing hands.
Wow.
Just by washing hands.
Okay.
So washing hands helps to get rid of germs that could bring about infection. That's one of the beautiful lessons that we have learned from COVID, bad as it is. A lot of us have learned to wash our hands repeatedly, especially as the need arises, wash our hands frequently, prevent contaminating our mouth and nose with unwashed hands. We've learned a lot about washing hands.
Yes.
So we have imbibed that practice and we should just continue with it.
Okay. But okay, so you talked about, we had George who was not feeling well and he told John to go and get him some medication. Well, how long should someone go if they have symptoms? How long should they wait before they seek medical advice? Because we don't know how long George waited before, he was trying to sort it out himself. When should he have sought medical advice?
Well, there's what they call reasonable self-medication. If he had maybe a pain reliever in the home and he took and he's noticed that he wasn't getting better within a day or two, he should seek the medical help.
Okay. All right. So antibiotic resistance. Is it just about the misuse of antibiotics? What can government do? What can consumers do? What can general public do?
Okay, let's start with us as the general public, because we have a big role to play there. We need to understand, like we have done through this educational series, we need to understand what the real problem is. And then how can we prevent these problems or circumvent the problems or surmount the problems? So what we are looking at now is antimicrobial resistance. If according to WHO, misuse of antibiotics is one of the key drivers, then we need to make sure that we do not misuse antibiotics. We should not use antibiotics that is not prescribed for us. And when it is prescribed, we should understand how to use it and use it as advised. If we have problems using it, because sometimes it may have side effects, we should report so that whoever is managing us, doctor managing us, will know what to do. And he might need to switch the antibiotics or whatever he has to do. But we should not just take the law into our hands to say, oh, I felt somehow when I was taking the antibiotics, so I've dropped it. No. So we have a lot of role to play there. We should be antibiotic guardians or antimicrobial guardians. Make sure that we also preach this gospel to the people around us so that they too buy into it. We should let them understand the catastrophe that can befall the whole world if we don't stem the tide of antimicrobial resistance. What with millions dying in some years to come? I mean, that is just not what anybody would want. So a lot that we can do as a public. Then we need the government to also regulate the use of antibiotics, the availability. antibiotics should not be readily available for people just anywhere. Antibiotics should be in the custody of those who are trained to handle them. So the government should come out strongly there. So I know there are laws to enforce these laws and make sure that there's compliance across the whole sectors. What else now? Government, public, I think you asked about government and public.
Yes. Okay. You're telling me, you've given me this information. You know, I'm Tina. I've been taking antibiotics. I've been taking Flagyl for so long, and I did not feel sick. So why should I be bothered?
It's not a feeling. If we listen to Dr. Chinyere, she did a lot of talk around that. That it's not just about feeling. These microbes, we cannot see them. You see, the enemy that has a stronger hand is the enemy that knows your inner heart, sees you, but you don't see. So that enemy is already advantage, while you are disadvantaged. So the fact that you don't feel somehow does not mean that nothing is happening. You might be breeding resistance strains. Those resistance strains, if they get to somebody else, or when you are really down, then the same antibiotics will not work for you again. And you might need something higher if it exists. For some conditions, you may not even get to what to kill, what to use at all. And that's where there's a lot of issue. So that you have been doing it before. Let me permit me to refer to the Bible. It says, in times of ignorance, God has overlooked. Now God commands man everywhere to do what? To repent. So if you have been doing it before, it's bad. Now you know it's bad, then it's time to stop doing it and adopt a positive approach
to that. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Mrs. Lawal. Now we are going to have questions for the whole panel. All the speakers from last week and today, we have a few questions, and I'm going to throw it out to the panel, and then they can answer. We have Dr. Wamboko from last week. By the way, if you missed session 1, that's on YouTube, and that's also on our Facebook page. So you can go back and watch that session. So the panel, let me ask you the first question. There's quite a few, so I'm trying to get to it. I saw it now and it's disappeared. Okay. So we had questions from Apostle Emma on Facebook. So firstly, why do most doctors or hospitals don't give the actual medicine to treat an illness? Did we get that?
Sorry, I didn't hear you well.
All right, can you hear me now? Is that better? So the comments request is why do most doctors or hospitals don't give the actual medicine to treat an illness? And he says he's speaking from experience, so that's why he's asking, making that comment, asking that question. Who wants to take that? Dr. Wamboko, maybe?
Why do
most doctors or hospitals don't give the actual medicine to treat a particular illness? He's speaking from experience. He's asking from his experience.
Actual medicine during any particular illness.
To treat the actual illness that may have been diagnosed, yes.
Wow, I don't really understand what the person is saying. Is he saying that when he goes to the hospital and maybe they make a diagnosis of malaria and they don't treat the malaria?
It didn't specify what the condition was.
Many times, I think what the person may be trying to say is probably the person goes to the hospital and then was expecting antibiotics to be given, And the doctor now says, okay, you have upper respiratory tract infection, and go take vitamins and take a lot of fluid, rest. And for them, it may not feel as if that has been treated, because sometimes you look at these things and you feel it is viral, and you will not want to give antibiotics, but they are expecting you to give them antibiotics because we are so used to antibiotics in Nigeria. Everything is antibiotics. They just want antibiotics by all means, and they don't feel that you have really treated the issue. Even when they come for malaria, in fact, at the point they'll tell you, I have had this malaria, now the thing has become typhoid. I just wonder how malaria can become typhoid, and they will want you to give them antibiotics. So that's how far we have gone with abuse, and this is what we are trying to check because of development of superbugs.
Yes.
So I hope the person has gotten the answer, and I hope I'm on the part of what the person was asking. So it's not everything that needs antibiotics.
Thank you. Thank you. I asked a question to Mrs. Lawal about a comment that someone had made, but I want to ask the rest of the panel. So if you want to answer, just raise your hand so that I know who wants to speak, and they will just go in order. Again, I've been taking the antibiotics like Flagyl for so long. I don't feel sick. Why am I bothered? Why should I be bothered? So what can the consumer do? What can the government do? And what? Okay, let me start with Dr. Wamboko. What can doctors do? So those three, your perspective. Did you hear me?
Sorry, the thing is not coming out well. What can governments do or doctors do?
Yes.
Which one did you say?
So I said, someone is asking, why should they be bothered? They've been taking antibiotics like Flagyl for so long, and they don't feel sick. So what can doctors do in relation to this kind of comment? What can governments do, and what can the patients themselves do?
For the doctors, is to counsel their patients. For the patients, is for them to abide by the counsel that they are being given. And for the government, we need more education. We need more enlightenment, like what is happening now. I mean, the government should sponsor more of such.
Yes.
We shouldn't be waiting for maybe an outside government to do it for us. We have the capacity, we have the manpower, we have the money to do it. Yes. That is what our government should encourage, because most of these things that are being done by the public, most of the things that the public do, many of them do it out of ignorance. No one will want to kill himself or herself. In fact, they think that they are helping themselves. But when they are educated, when they have the right information that this is not the best, I think they'll go a long way to comply. I don't say we will have 100% compliance, but it will improve.
Okay. I'll put the same question to Aishat, Farmer Aishat. What can pharmacists do? I know Mrs. Lawal has given her perspective. Let's hear from you.
Could you repeat the question, please?
So the comment to question is, well, why should I be bothered? I've been taking antibiotics like Flagyl for so long. I do not feel sick. So what can the pharmacists do with that kind of...
What have they been taking the antibiotics for? They don't feel sick. What have they been taking the antibiotics for? If you don't feel sick, then why are you using antibiotics in the first place? You just abuse the antibiotics for no reason. I mean, if you have a problem, you go see a doctor. If you don't have a problem, then why are you using antibiotics? I really don't understand what that person wants us to say. You don't feel sick. and you've been taking antibiotics for a very long time, yet you don't feel sick. Okay, maybe because the antibiotics are actually doing what they're supposed to do, that's why you don't feel sick. Or maybe because you're just using antibiotics irrationally for what it's not supposed to be used for. So first of all, I just need to know what the person is using antibiotics for. That's
So what is it for? Okay, I'm going to twist it a bit. Dr. Chinyere, what can farmers do? What can vets do? Because the issue also happens, in animals, doesn't it? Antibiotic resistance also happens, like you mentioned earlier. And then, what can the pharmaceutical industry do? So I've given you three
sectors all by myself.
Yes.
Okay. So in we'll start with the first one, the vets. So if you think about the management and treatment of infectious diseases in animals, there is, I'm not a veterinarian, I'm not a practitioner in veterinary medicine, but there are rules, the same standards and policies and rules and protocols that applies in human management of infectious disease in humans also applies in animals, right? Mm-hmm. And this is both in sort of people who keep household animals, so animals that live with us, whether for food or for pets or farmed animals. So there are protocols. So if you cannot indiscriminately give antibiotics to your animals. You have to seek the advice of a qualified practitioner, where they can, if possible, they can do testing, and where they need to do that empirically. But they can do that as well. But they have to do the decision making for you. You can't make that decision on your own, because the same potential you have to abuse and misuse antimicrobials in humans, the same potential you have in animals. And the reason we are concerned about antibiotic resistance or antimicrobial resistance in the animals is because, again, we live together, we all inhabit this environment together, and also the animal waste which goes into the environment turns back around to us. So it's almost like it's a tripart, almost a three-part figure where everybody's interconnected, right? So as I said, the protocols and the rules and the regulation that pertains in treatment and prevention of infectious disease in animals, in humans, pertains in the animals. And we can't just ignore that. And of course, if you're a farmer or a commercial farmer, it's first of all being responsible, telling yourself, okay, maybe I've been adopting practices that I thought were beneficial to my farm. But now that I have awareness of the impact of these practices, especially if it involves maybe misusing of antibiotics, maybe I should change those practices and then look at what the protocols existing, if it's available. And these protocols are sometimes provided by the local regulatory body, right? And then follow them. And if you're not sure, please seek the advice of the your veterinary medical practitioner that you use in your farms. The other section is pharmaceutical.
Wait, let me clarify the comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the comment? Sorry.
It's your advice that we would like. They want advice. Mm-hmm. If I've been self-prescribing antibiotics for different diseases, but till now it's been working and I see nothing wrong with my system, why should I worry? Is there any reason to worry? Okay. So like, what can we, pharmacists, doctors, government, pharmaceutical industry, in the vet, how can we reduce or change this kind of thought pattern, this kind of thinking?
Okay. So if
I'll come to you after cheering.
If you've been self-medicating, please stop. Stop.
Absolutely.
Stop. You shouldn't self-medicate.
Yes.
Once you stop, then the reason, if you don't stop, if you don't stop, there are so many things you'll be you continue doing. One is you're taking any kind of antibiotics and you're not feeling ill, right? And Mrs. Lawal mentioned, okay, maybe you are doing something. That something you're doing is you could potentially be killing bacteria. So remember I said not all bacteria is bad. The idea is not to eliminate, because some of these bacteria live in symbiotic relationship with us, which means that we benefit from their existence.
Yeah, we need them.
So if you take antibiotics, remember antibiotics kill bacteria. So remember they kill sensitive bacteria. And so if you take antibiotics that is not, it's almost like directionless, right? You're not treating any infection, you're just swallowing it. You may potentially, and there's research to back this up, be affecting the populations of beneficial bacteria, which can potentially open you up for infection by non-beneficial or pathogenic bacteria. So that's one sort of a risk that you're exposing yourself to. And so please, the first thing as an individual, because we all have personal responsibility in this case, this is what we're talking to, this is where we're bringing it open and we're telling everyone, is stop, please stop self-medicating. Okay, for the pharmaceutical industry, I think a lot, all the qualified pharmaceutical people here can support me in this, or correct me if I'm wrong, is that please do not go to and do not buy your antibiotics without prescription, because I'm sure if you go to a qualified pharmacist, they will not. They would have to look at the prescription before they give you over the counter. They might ask to, and if they find out that you're just going there to buy it like chewing gum, it's not a good thing. So and so for the pharmaceutical so in a wider context, there has to be maybe perhaps a bit more how would I say, vigor in making sure that the regulations that are already existing in terms of governing the availability of antibiotics over the counter, to regulate it in such a way that people are not abusing loopholes in those regulations. And if they don't exist, to start to implement those so that people don't buy antibiotics over the counter like the way they will buy, sweets and chewing gum.
And Aisha, you wanted to say something?
Yes, okay, I understand the question a little bit more.
Yeah, the comment,
One thing is self-prescription of antibiotics or any kind of antimicrobial is not advised. I think a lot of people have hammered on that already. A lot of the speakers have said this over and over again. Self-prescription is not advised. And even in pharmacies, when I was in community pharmacy, I remember vividly, if anybody comes to us with a complaint, of course, there are certain things we can do empirical diagnosis for. But then if they come with certain kind of complaints that we know that we need a lab test result to prescribe for, we liaise with so many, diagnostic centers outside. And so we just fill out the forms and then we tell the patients to go and take the test, then come back with the results. When we see the results, then it will guide us in knowing what kind of antibiotics to give. So even we cannot just up and give you antibiotics. It's kind of like, it's wrong. We know it is wrong, which is why we'll ask you to go do a test, come back with your results, we'll read the results, and then tell you what you need to use. Now, if you've been using antibiotics for such a long time and you think you're fine, you might not be so fine. Dr. Okoro mentioned that you could be harming the good bacteria in your body and you wouldn't even know. Like I mentioned some time ago, sometimes the imbalance or the stomach upset you might feel is because you have used so much Flagyl that you have even killed some bacteria that are useful to your digestion. You are causing something called superinfection. I mentioned also about women that could give themselves yeast infection from overusing antibiotics. So you might think you're fine, but you're not as fine as you know. And then there's this thing, long-term use of drugs. When you continuously use Flagyl, you continuously use this, your liver, it tells on the liver after a while, because you're overworking your liver. It's the organ for metabolism. It's the one that's supposed to break down this drug and distribute it to the body as it's required. Now, if it's going to continue to work and work and work, like some people that use paracetamol, for every small thing they use paracetamol, it has the ability of causing hepatotoxicity. So antibiotics too, it would continue to give you problems on the long run. So like Dr. Okoro said, don't even do it. Do not self-prescribe for any reason, please. Thank you.
Thank you Lawal, any comments to add to that?
Oh, yes. I have read the question now and it's a lot more clearer. So there's so many issues that you've been getting away. It's like sometimes when you set a trap for a smart rat, so you just use a tail to stick it and eat the meat. One day, it will not be that lucky. So
Oh, okay. I think we've lost Mrs. Lawal briefly. And when she comes back, there's one thing I want to ask the panel, maybe the ones based in Nigeria. When it comes to, because Dr. Okoro mentioned the environment, how are patients supposed to dispose of their medicines? So you've had the prescription, and for example, it might be a cream, because you might not use the whole tube, but of course you have enough for a certain number of days the doctor has given it to you. How are you supposed to dispose of it? Is it supposed to just go in the bin, or if it's a suspension, is it supposed to just go down the sink? How is it disposed of? What are the arrangements for disposal of medicines in Nigeria? Because we need to protect the environment from antibiotic pollution by disposing of unused or expired antibiotics or medicines properly. So what's the arrangement? Amaisha, do you want to take that?
Okay, if it was the same world, we should be able to dispose capsules that remain or tablets will remain in the bin and not worry about anything. We all know that our environment, anybody can pour anything at any time. So what I'll advise is maybe suspensions, or you can actually pour it down the drain because it's going to get diluted, so much so that it's not going to have that much effect. I don't know if I'm making any sense. There's going to be dilution, so it's not going to be an antibiotic anymore. It's so negligible at the end of the day that it doesn't really harm. But if it's a situation whereby there's a particular place that they keep keeping drugs all the time, definitely that spot or that environment is going to be affected. But if we throw it out randomly, just pour it out randomly, I think do not quote me as I do not have scientific backing on it. I think there will be enough dilution such that it wouldn't be that much of a problem to the environment. Please, I stand corrected.
Yes, I mean, I think the best thing is to take it back to the pharmacy where you got the prescription from in the first place. And then they
May
can...
I ask, is that what is applicable elsewhere?
Yes.
Because I know for a fact that as a community pharmacist, I might not want to take back half these drugs because there's little or nothing to do with it. Exactly.
So that's why I was asking, yes, what is the arrangement within Nigeria so that people know?
Community pharmacists generally, I think Lawal can back me up on this. We don't collect back half these drugs.
Yes, I will ask her when she comes back. She's dropped off. Yes.
So maybe we can all just try to dispose of it in our homes, as much as possible. Like if there are tablets remaining, if we could just pop it into water, let it dissolve so we can pour it out. So it goes into a larger body of water and hopefully get diluted. That's off the top of my head. That is what I can advise.
Okay, Dr. Wamboko. Yes, but I know definitely they shouldn't be just thrown in the bin. They shouldn't be poured down. They shouldn't be poured down the sink.
So Flora, can you tell us what is applicable?
No, you see, the reason I'm asking is because in different countries there might be different arrangements. So that's why I'm specifically asking about Nigeria.
Okay.
Let me ask Dr. Wamboko first, and then if Mrs. Lawal logs back in, then we can ask her as well. Dr. Wamboko, can you hear me?
Yeah, that is disposing of antibiotics.
Not just antibiotics, any unused medicines. What is the arrangement in Nigeria?
Well, in Nigeria, I'm not too sure of the arrangement they have made for the public, but I'm sure of the arrangement they have made for the hospitals. Okay. But I don't know whether it applies to the public.
Okay.
So we have the LOMA, They pick up refuse. They have the bags that they have the bags for drugs, medications, expired or the one you want to discard.
Okay.
The color for that is brown. So, and then they have the colors for other things like dangerous materials like blood stain or anything. And of course, they have the sharps for the sharp things.
Yes.
So I don't know whether they extend this to the public, but I think they should. Because it's still the same llama that is supposed to carry even the ordinary dustbin.
Yes.
But the problem is effectiveness.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry, ma, that's in Lagos, right?
Yes, in Lagos.
Kwakma over here, we have everything green. All our bins are green.
Where are you based? What state is that? In Lorry?
Kwara State, Ilori.
Kwara State.
Kwakma,
Okay.
it's all green. So I am not sure there is any difference between anyone. Even if I'm to come to the public now and tell them, dispose of this here, dispose of that there, they might not even, they might think I'm not talking sense since there's no difference.
All right. Okay. I get, again, as that's what I was even saying. There's differences in different countries with different states and how they do things. So in that state, they might decide that's how they want to do it, put it all in the same bag, and that's fine.
But it's safer, like Dr. Wabba said. If there's actually a difference between the bins, at least you in the hospital, you can tell your patients that, okay, this is where you have to dispose of your drugs when you don't use it anymore.
Yeah.
And pharmacists will also say that it's easy to lead them there.
Yes, but yeah, that's fine.
Sorry. Hi everyone. 1 second, I'm just gonna come in just here. So I think that's one of the key things here is for us to maybe do some more homework so that we can provide the public with better awareness and information regarding the safe disposal of medicines, and also so that we're not letting antibiotics into the environment through disposal in our toilets or sinks or things like that, because that's one of the issues with the One Health approach. Getting it into sewage where it's not been accurately destroyed, so that it doesn't go and affect other food sources and the soil, because then we have issues with farming, agriculture, and it getting into the food web. So we just have to be careful about that. So I thought I'd come in and make that comment, and then to our listeners as well, it's very important that we will find out more about this, and then we will let you know. So I think the key thing is finding out what the current arrangements for possibly different states, and hopefully we'll work with some of our speakers to get that information clarified. Okay.
Yeah.
If I just may add to what Dr. Orede was just saying. So a lot of this again, this is not where I work, I'm not really situated in that field, but I am aware that a lot of, especially with disposal into the environment, there's a lot of policy work going on around, first of all, using evidence based on research, and surveillance, and, even whether it's from outside of the particular country or the particular location to formulate policy. Because if you think about safe disposal, these are government agencies that carry out these things, right? So a lot of the intervention will be policy based. But the important thing is that we're discussing it. We ordinary people are actually, this might be a problem. So the awareness, which is, I'm very pleased, this is the first step, is then all of us, when we start asking these questions. Where does extra, how do I throw away this thing? I have I still have a packet of canestin no, not me, but you know, I had an antifungal cream I bought 2 years ago that is still in the medicine cabinet. How do I throw it away? So these are the questions we as ordinary people are now asking. Is that awareness, right? You know, it's not, you're looking for a better way of doing things. So it's also homework for all of us, right? So to go and look at our environmental sanitation policies for our local government areas, and perhaps start asking these questions, you know,
okay,
the right people.
Yeah.
As citizens, you know,
I'm thinking of so many
yeah,
so many things at the moment. Okay, so for each speaker, just one. This next question, I just want one comment. I live in Nigeria. What can I do to prevent these drug-resistant diseases? So one comment for each speaker. Go on. I'll start with Dr. Okoro and then we go round.
I will not take antibiotics except if prescribed.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Wambuko.
Question again, please.
I live in Nigeria. What can I do to prevent these drug-resistant diseases?
What can I do to prevent this? Stop indiscriminate use of antibiotics. That's one comment.
Okay.
Stop indiscriminate use of antibiotics.
All right, Dr. Wamboko.
Make sure you complete your antibiotics as prescribed.
Okay. Famlawal.
I will make sure that I get prescriptions for my antibiotics and I see my pharmacist for how to use appropriately. So I will make sure that I get prescription and I use my antibiotics appropriately.
And I'm going to add a comment. Make sure that the patient understands what you're telling them. And you as a patient, if you don't understand, ask. The healthcare professionals would, of course, more than willing to explain to you any questions you may have. There's no such thing as a silly question. So ask. And the healthcare professional ensure that they understand what you're saying. You can sometimes see it on your on the patient's face that they're not quite sure. So just make sure that they understand whatever information that you're giving, and you as the patient, whatever information is being given to you, ask questions. Don't be afraid. There's nothing like a silly question. That's my comment. Doctor, did you have any comments to that? To that question?
Okay, to say I will handle my food with care so that I can prevent infections.
Yes, okay. Let's all use our emojis. I like that one. So thank you, everybody. That has been an amazing second session. Lots of questions, lots of information. Thank you to all who have joined us across Facebook, on YouTube. It's been great. Let me see. Yeah, okay. We have two people that have not spoken before I start saying bye-bye to everybody. Bukola Folorunshaw. Any comments? One comment regarding how to prevent diseases? And Jide as well. I'm sorry?
Jide.
Yes, I've just asked him.
Everyone pharmacies.
Oh, Bukola, the line is not very clear. You're breaking up. Let me just go to Jide. I will come back to you and try again. So, Jide.
Yes, ma'am.
So, your comment. I live in Nigeria. What can I do to prevent these drug-resistant diseases?
Actually, if we all put our hands to it. Said.
Go on, Jide.
Yeah, I think the best method is to make sure you follow the doctor's prescription or the pharmacist's prescription when given an antibiotic to use. And it doesn't stop at you. You have to educate your neighbors, people around you, tell them why we should make sure we use our antibiotics safely, because if we don't, there's a risk of them of our common microorganisms that cause disease becoming resistant. And when they become resistant, it does not mean only one person is affected. Everybody can be affected. So the call to action is to make sure everybody is following the same advice in using antibiotics.
Thank you very much, Jide. Let's try Bukola Folorunsho one more time. And let's take a comment from her. Bukola, go ahead.
Yes, we all have a role to play, whether you're a pharmacist, doctor, mechanic. Every one of us has a role to play. The trade, and we can achieve it once we put our habit in our minds that we are going to overcome the issue of antimicrobials. You hear me?
Thank
Hello?
you. What? Yes, you were breaking, but what you were trying to say is, what you are saying is everyone has a role to play together. Everyone has a role to play, and together we can achieve it. So that's what
Yes.
Bukola Folorunsho
Yes.
was saying. Thank you very much. Thank you. Wow. Okay. So I'm going to hand over to Dr. Orode now for some closing remarks, as it were. Thank you once again, everybody. Dr. O rather. Well, O and A. There you go. Dr. A, over to you.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to our speakers and our attendees on Facebook, YouTube, and on the Superbugs online radio. It has been a pleasure. I'm sure all the speakers have been so excited to share with you their different, areas of expertise with regards to raising awareness and increasing knowledge about the dangers of drug-resistant infections. So I'll just like to go over this. So today we have had Dr. Chinyere Okoro of the University of Paris. She's spoken about the spread of antibiotic resistance. Everyone has a role to play. Mrs. Bukola Amudo, a dietitian, who talked about healthy diet, immunity, and the prevention of disease. And last but not least, Mrs. Folashade Lawal, who spoke on preventing diseases to reduce the risks of antimicrobial resistance. Awesome, thank you so much. So over the past 2 years, the You and The Superbugs events have been supported by the following sponsors and companies that we have partnered with. And I'll just like to say thank you once again. So the University of Oxford, is the You and Superbugs research sponsor. So over the past 2 years, we've focused on some aspects of research which have really informed how we now educate the public and the kind of speakers that come to share knowledge and training on our platform. The Wellcome Center for Human Genetics at the University of Oxford, Victory Drugs Pharmacy, Nigeria, Encapsulate Healthcare Solutions, Nkaba Biotech, Brains Premier College, the Royal Society of Biology, Shepherd Specialist Hospital, Lagos, Nigeria. So that's quite a long list, and we're continually seeking to partner with other companies and other sponsors. It's important that we see that there is a very, very, high need for education in Nigeria. And we're so passionate about moving this knowledge to different aspects, different cities in Nigeria. So, me and you working together to reduce the impact of drug-resistant infections and even prevent them in whatever way from occurring as much as possible. Okay, so I'd just like to thank the speakers from last week as well. We have all the sessions. They're saved on YouTube, on Facebook. If you just search You and The Superbugs on Facebook, you find the page on YouTube and on the radio, the live radio, online radio station as well. So you can go back and listen to these over and over again. So we had Mr. Jide Babayeju, Life Without Antibiotics, the biggest pandemic. We had Farm Aisha Tolufadi Ahmed and Dr. Mwabuko, and you've heard from them again this week. So I'd just like to say thank you to our speakers from last week and again from this week. So if you've stuck with us for this long, we would like to hear, or even if you attended last week, we would like to receive your feedback. What did you think about the event? Was there something special that you learned, or was there something you think that we should do, an area where you think we should really work on? So please screenshot this link and share your feedback with us. We really want to hear your thoughts about the event and how we can better serve the public. Okay, I'll just leave that there for a few seconds. Please take a screenshot and share it with your network. Would like your feedback. And now we're getting ready for next year. 2020 is almost over, but we're actively getting ready for 2021, Me, You, and the Superbugs. Hopefully, the pandemic would have gone away and we'll be able to travel freely and not worry about infecting each other or spreading the virus. So that is the link on Eventbrite. If you search Me, You, and the Superbugs 2021, you should be able to find that and register. So we hope to be live face-to-face and not only a virtual event. So I'll leave that there again. If you want to screenshot that, please feel free to share that with your network. Now, one of the main things we always do is not just coming to you to say, these are the different ways you can prevent infection, or these are the different ways that the things we both need to do in order to reduce the spread of antibiotic resistance, of drug-resistant infections in Africa, especially in Nigeria. There is the website antibioticguardian.com/Africa, which puts the responsibility in your hands, and that is to become an antibiotic guardian. And what I'm now going to do is just to share with you the website so that you can do it while I am speaking to you. So if you have not done it, as you can see right now, we're at 400, the Antibiotic Guardian website. This is a global thing. So this is specifically the page for Africa. Right now, it was launched last year, and the Me, You, and the Superbugs events, we're able to encourage a lot of people to join, and a lot of people became antibiotic guardians, and they had their antibiotic guardian badges. Like Mrs. Lawa will show you her badge. Hopefully, when I finish speaking, if she has it nearby. I also have mine, but sorry, I don't have it on me right now. So for you to become an antibiotic guardian, anyone can become an antibiotic guardian. And it just means you making certain pledges about how you are going to ensure that we continue to keep our antibiotics safe. Right now, we're at 469 pledges. I think just about yesterday or earlier during the week, the other European site, the one from the UK, has already reached 10,000. So we'd like to continue to contribute to the African one. That's what we're about. So what you need to do here is to say, to become an antibiotic guardian, you need to choose your pledge. It's very simple. You get a certificate at the end, and hopefully, when you come next year, we'll be able to give you a badge to say you can proudly showcase that you're an antibiotic guardian. All right, so you need to choose here human health or any of these ones, which category you fall into. So you'll be able to choose any if you just click the box there. You can do this on your mobile phone. You can do this on your laptop while you're listening right now. So it's very important that you choose one of those. And when you choose one of those, so assuming I'm a healthcare educator, once you choose one of those, the next thing is to choose a pledge. I'll just read out a few of these. It says, for example, you can click the box here. I pledge to use antibiotics only when indicated for a bacterial infection. So we've heard so much from all our speakers about the importance of speaking to your healthcare professional before you take antibiotics, and really reducing that self-prescription and just going to get antibiotics over the counter for an infection that you're not even sure if it's bacterial. So you choose a universal pledge. For example, we talked about how to prevent diseases. For example, using a good diet to boost your immune system, maintaining a good diet, the different practical things that you can eat in Nigeria that you can source for, how to check your food when you go to the market. We've talked about all of those. And we've also heard that was from Mrs. Amuja, and we heard from Mrs. Dawa about practical things you can do in your home and for your person to prevent having an infection in the first place, so that you don't need antibiotics, or you keep them for when they are needed. So another one says, I will wash my hands after sneezing or coughing. to reduce transmission of infection and antibiotic resistance. And we heard from Mr. Babajide, one of our speakers, says, I will encourage my family members and friends to do the same. So a simple act like that from me and from you actually prevents the spread of these superbugs. It prevents the spread, reduces actually the spread of antimicrobial resistance in the community, not just in Nigeria, but all over the world. We don't want those projections becoming real. As we can see, the millions of people that have been affected by the current virus. We heard last week from Mr. Babayeju about, antibiotic resistance can become the next pandemic. And it's very, very important that we do our best to prevent that in the first place. And then you select a health category message, a pledge. You can select any of these. Is that either by continually developing yourself professionally, attending different trainings? Enter your full name. It's very important that you enter your full name and your email because of your certificate. Select your country. Nigeria should be here somewhere. Scroll down and select, yes, Nigeria is there. So select your country, your postcode. Usually there's a website to stick for Nigerian postcodes. If you Google postcodes Nigeria, something like that, you'll be able to find that database of how to get your postcode for your area. For example, you can enter, I think it's usually like 5 zeros or something like that. If you have any problems, please send an email to us and we can help you. We can advise on how to fill this. From whom did you hear about this? You can select non-governmental organizations and then put in here me, you, and the superbugs so that we can track how many people from our events have actually become antibiotic guardians. Isn't that exciting? Isn't that great? So that's one of the ways we make impacts with the event. And do you want to be followed up on your antibiotic pledge? Sometimes you need accountability, somebody to make sure that auntie, uncle, are you doing what you said you were going to do? And I'm sure we are all passionate about this. That's why we're here. So yes or no, that's a voluntary decision you make. It doesn't impact you getting your certificate. So once you fill in your code, click submit. And don't close it, click submit and just wait to get your certificate appearing on the screen. I would advise that you take a screenshot of that, or instead of just relying that it comes to your emails. So do that and make a tweet about it, put it on Facebook. You can come to our page on Facebook and say, I have become an antibiotic guardian. It's important that we all continually work together, to reduce the spread of this antimicrobial resistance in our communities. All right, and I'll just go back to my slides while I put everything to an end. So I hope that you have become an antibiotic guardian following these instructions. Again, that is the website. You can do it at your own leisure. I'd really encourage you to become an antibiotic guardian and continue to spread this message to your family members and the community at large as much as you can. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about, how to prevent diseases, antibiotic resistance, what you can do. Don't use antibiotics without speaking to your medical doctor or your pharmacist, your healthcare worker that is available to you. You understand? So, but what we would like to do is to offer training, antimicrobial stewardship training in 2021 for healthcare workers, hospitals, community health leaders in Nigeria. So this is another opportunity to screenshot, register your interest by sending an email to info@meyouandthesuperbugs.org. We would like to put the power in your hands so that as a healthcare worker, a community health leader, you know what to do, what to say to your patients, in order to ensure that they are adhering either to the prescriptions that you've given them or even your own responsible use of antibiotics in your hospital so that all your staff are well equipped with the knowledge of antimicrobial resistance and the practical ways that they can prevent it and prescribe appropriately. All right. Okay. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for attending the 2020 Me, You and the Superbugs event. And that is it. So we look forward to your comments and your feedback and all of that lovely stuff. Great. And thank you very much. Bye, everybody.